I apologize for the whining in the background. My puppy is right there. He is right there. He can see me. But apparently I am too far away. Hi! Hey! Hi! It's me, your Void. Today I'm bringing you a bunch of queer reading recommendations. These are all books that feature queer characters, and they are really good, and you should read them. Starting off with Velocity Weapon by Megan E. O'Keefe. None of the main characters are necessarily queer in this one, but this is one of those queer inclusive worlds, universes. Not quite a universe, but this is a queer normative society, and our main character, Sunda, has two dads. So there are queer characters in here that we see on page doing things. Her dads are actually pretty cool. An ex-smuggler, and I don't think we're ever told what the other one does, but he was on the right side of the law, so the smuggler gave up smuggling to be with his love, and then they had two kids, and the two kids are the main POV characters in this book. And in Velocity Weapon itself, the plot doesn't revolve around anyone being queer. It doesn't revolve about the fact that queer is a thing. It's just there. It is very normal, very widespread, very accepted. People just go with it. We follow two timelines. The one being Sunda's timeline, which is 200 years after a ginormous war between two different planets, and she has to cope with the fact that neither of these planets still exist. They nuked each other out of existence, and with the planets being gone, all of the people are gone, including all of the people Sunda knew, including her family. And all that's left is just her and a ship that she finds herself on, an enemy ship actually, and his name is Vero because he is a self-aware AI, and he kind of picked her up out of the debris field. It's like, hey, I kinda need a human to get where I want to go, which is civilization. But that civilization is like 75 years away, so can you help me, please? Thank you. And the other timeline follows Sunda's brother, who just graduated from this super duper elite, spectacular school of stuff, I guess. And he now gets the privilege of containing a microchip in his brain that actually allows his people to travel as fast as they can. That is the reason the war broke out, because one planet has this information and the other planet does not have that information, so there is this power imbalance that sparked the war. So he now just freshly has that ship, and he is thrown into the beginnings of this war. So his side shows us how this war begins and kind of plays out, and then we have Sunda, who has to deal with... Are you okay? And then we have Sunda, who has to deal with the repercussions of it, with the what comes after. And I love this book so much. There is a third character in here. Her perspective, I felt, was completely unnecessary, at least for book one. I'm pretty sure, I haven't continued the series yet, I'm pretty sure it's going to be important in book 2 and 3, based on shit that happened at the end of this book. But her perspective in book 1 is kind of pointless, and that is the only thing that stopped me from giving this 5 stars. Everything else in here was so good. The plot twist in the middle of the book. If I were a person who threw books, I would have thrown this across the room, because what do you mean? What do you mean? Yes. If you want to read something that is set in space where being queer is not being ridiculed or prosecuted or whatever, read Velocity Weapon. This is also a really good entrance into the sci-fi genre, specifically the spacefaring sci-fi genre if you primarily read fantasy. Can only recommend this. The next book I have for you, again, Queer Normative Society in Space, and that is The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. Technically, I recommend the entire series, the entire Wayfarer series. Again, we have a intergalactic society that is just completely queer normative. But in this one specifically, we do have a couple of queer characters. We have Sissix and Rosemary, and they, throughout the book, become... I don't want to say a couple, because Sissix's cultural background does not emphasize monogamy that much. and relationships work differently, but they do have a relationship. They do have an intimate relationship, and they are two women. We also have Dr. Chef. I love Dr. Chef. Dr. Chef's species, they all start out female, and then at some point they just all change their gender to become male, which is now sadly why his entire species is at the edge of extinction, because there was an entire war and they sent all of their daughters to go there, and everyone who survived that war, which is only a couple of people, is now too old to still be female. So now all the members of the species left are male, meaning they face their own extinction. But again, queer normative society, this is incredibly wholesome. Despite what I just told you, this is incredibly wholesome. Specifically this book. The other books are also very great. The stakes in these books are not that hard. It's mostly slice of life from the very different people in these societies. I'm going to hit pause right now, and I'm going to take care of this puppy because he's currently losing his mind.
1 minute, 37 seconds later.
Great. Gave him something to chew on. We should be good now. Where was I? Queer normative society, somewhere out in space. And a lot of people in this are actually queer. Most of these stories in the Wayfarer series are focusing on cozy slice of life shenanigans. There is a plot with like a wee bit of tension in every single one of these, but it's mostly just something happens and this is how people react to it in their day-to-day life. So if you are not looking for the high-stakes war space drama, but something more on the cozy side, read the Wayfarer series by Becky Chambers. Still cozy, but kind of unsettling in a way, is a Botanical Daughter by Noah Medlock. This one I like to describe as the vegetarian version of Frankenstein, because you have Simon and Gregor, two gentlemen in Victorian England. They are very much in love with each other. Why? I'm not quite sure, but they somehow make it work. And it's actually, like, it's the cute kind of messy relationship they have. They are very peculiar people, and they should not match, yet they are so much in love with each other. It's actually kind of poetic. But they one day decide, well, one of them one day decides, hey, I have this very funny fungus and I want to try something, and I have to add a bunch of plants to it. But like technically I think I can make a functioning being out of plants and fungus, so I want to do it, but I need the right medium. And the other one is, well, don't you have enough dirt in the greenhouse we live in? And the botanist of the two is like, I was more thinking along the lines of something that you work with. The other one is a taxidermist. So they one night just go out and steal a body, and then they use that body as a planter and put a bunch of plants and fungus in it, and then they have the titular botanical daughter, and they have to somehow make it work. They also have a new live-in maid who has to figure out what exactly are these peculiarities of these two gentlemen, of which there are many. Peculiarities, not gentlemen, that is. Then she figures out that this plant creature exists, and she is then tasked with taking care of this plant creature. Again, the stakes in this are not very high, and for the most part it is a slow-moving descent into absolute madness for both of these people, for both of these men, and then also for that maid. But it is poetically written. The atmosphere in this is so strong. Like, there were times where I thought I could smell these flowers, and I am not someone, if you describe a smell to me, I don't smell it. I have to actively smell something to smell it. So this book making me feel like I can smell the flowers, good job. As you can tell, this is not a queer normative world. They live in Victorian England, and they do have to keep their relationship kind of on the down low, and it is part of the story that they keep their stuff kind of hidden. But because their relationship is as strange as it is, they also kind of don't have to. They allude to the fact that they have to keep it a secret, but since they live so far away from society and they are not the biggest fans of society in the first place, it is kind of not an issue, but at the same time it is. Like, they're aware that it is an issue, but they also made themselves a life where it is the tiniest issue possible. And like I said, it is so messy. This relationship between these two is so messy, and I love it so much. so much. So for clarification, we have a lesbian relationship in this and a gay relationship in this. And technically one of the side characters is low-key bisexual, I guess. We are raising the stakes a little bit with the next one, and that is The Library of the Unwritten by A.J. Hackwith. For the longest part, I didn't even realize that this is an LGBTQIA+ read, but then I reached a certain point and suddenly there were lesbians. Oh no! Surprise lesbians! But in The Library of the Unwritten, we follow Claire, and Claire is a librarian in hell. She is specifically the librarian of the Library of the Unwritten. Now, what is the Library of the Unwritten? Well, it is an extra-dimensional space, a library, if you will, where stories go when they have never been finished. They sit there on the shelves, and sometimes they come alive because they think, I can end my own story. And then characters from those books, heroes, villains, what is it called? It's not called maidens, the damsels. Your usual story characters sometimes plop out of the book and think, I need to find my author so my author can finish the story. And it is Claire's job to make sure that these books don't do that. And that when the characters do plop out, they go back inside, or they don't go into the real world to find their author, because that is very bad. And in this book, one of those characters escapes the library and finds his author, and is now trying to convince this author to finish the story, and it is Claire's job to wrangle this character and get him back into hell. But then we also find a page of a book that should not exist, which has so much power, which then suddenly means a bunch of demons and an angel is after this piece of a book, and she, as the librarian of the Library of the Unwritten, is tasked with getting that thing and putting it in the library so it is safe and that the world is safe from it. And she's joined in her quest by a newly formed kind of apprentice demon and her own apprentice, which was once upon a time a muse, but now she's an apprentice to become the next librarian. And we also have to go through a bunch of afterlives. There is a poetry slam battle in Valhalla with the previous librarian, and then we find another character from a different book that she never recovered. There's a lot going on, and we have, at least in this book, a confirmed lesbian relationship for Claire and another character, and I could be wrong, but as a queer person, I am skilled in reading queer subtext, and the queer subtext here tells me that a certain angel in this is very much gay. I just don't know who for. Maybe that one apprentice demon, I'm not quite sure, but he's giving off major gay vibes, so I don't know. This is another series I have started and never continued, so feel free to shame me in the comments for not continuing the series. The last traditionally published queer recommendation for you I have today is 13 Stories by Jonathan Sims. I like to describe 13 Stories as a mini season of the Magnus podcast. If you have listened to the Magnus podcast, you will know what I mean. If not, don't worry. It doesn't have any ties to the Magnus archives. It's just I see the similarities. Because in 13 Stories, we follow a bunch of people. And the only connection they have is that they live in the same building. And these things that happen to them are kind of gruesome. We follow them in their day-to-day life, and then suddenly very, very horrific things happen. Beware! There is a lot of gore in it. At one point, we pull a full-on shining blood river tsunami hallway, but with a ballroom. There is another moment where the janitor looks into the wall to fix a faulty, I think it was plumbing that he wanted to fix, and the entire building suddenly has veins instead of pipes. Like, it's going places. But Jonathan Sims is a master at writing normal-ass queer people. It's, if you are a queer person, you probably know this, but you surround yourself with other queer people. Sometimes to a point where you forget that heteronormativity is a thing, because you are surrounded by so many people of so many different gender expressions, of so many sexualities, of people who are just accepting that without even blinking. I hope you know what I mean. And that vibe, that atmosphere, that feeling is what Jonathan Sims writes perfectly. There are hetero characters in here, there are characters in here that are anywhere on the spectrum of the rainbow in terms of sexuality, there are people on different ends of the spectrum when it comes to gender, and they just exist. And he manages to make the horror of the book not about that. The horror for these characters does not necessarily come from all of the issues queer people face in their day-to-day life. And I can respect that. It's also just a very great read. Because at the end, all of these characters, their stories come together, and when you figure out why, when it clicks, it's just, what? And then the ending of the book, what? This is a very, very good horror book, in my opinion, and not enough people are reading it. The next recommendation I have for you is one of my absolute favorites. If you've been around on my channel for a hot second, you will know what is coming, because I have hyped this series up so much. I have hyped this author up so much. I am talking about The Guide to Dating Vampires by Bryn. I don't have book 1 as a physical copy because I read that as an ebook, fell in love, gave it 5 stars, and then I bought the entire rest of the series without even looking at the blurb. I'm not even up to date with the series. I'm missing 1 book, and the next novella has been announced. I am so deeply in love with this. But what is it about, I hear you ask? Well, it is a romance series, and every book follows a different couple, but the one thing that is special about these couples is it is always a vampire and a human that fall in love with each other. In this world, people know vampires exist. It's public knowledge, and it is treated more like a chronic illness, like a disability even, than it is in most paranormal romance situations. So the world knows vampires exist and they're treated as a medical thing. So there's this pharmacy company stuff, and that is sitting in this one town, where usually in this town is called San Salud, and there is the headquarters of this company, and this is where we meet all our couples. Vampires are very much ostracized from society. You are a vampire, that's a stigma. It's like, think HIV back in the day. You have it, people don't want to touch you, basically. In the first installment of the series, we follow 2 guys. They were neighbors once upon a time, then stuff happened, and now they meet back up again, because one of them thinks the other one's blood tastes very, very good, and he can't stay away from that, and they build up around that. In book 2, we follow these 2 idiots, Clementine and Justin. Clementine works for that company, and that company, because, you know, it's a company, and it's a medical company, you know how shady that stuff is that they are all doing. But Clementine works for that company, and he's a freshly turned vampire, so he has no idea how to hunt for himself. Justin is kind of a neighborhood vigilante who is protecting vampires from this corporation, from the badness that is society. And he is like, okay, wait, let me help you. And that's where they hit it off. Then we have a prequel with the Stars and the Stage, where we follow Maddox and Diego. They had a falling out when Diego turned into a vampire, and then Diego also had a little gender crisis, and now they are reconnecting, and they are now both working to make safe spaces for vampires once they move back into San Salud. And then in book 3, I have no idea what's going on because I haven't read that one yet, and book 4 I don't even own yet. But it's usually a human and the vampire, and one or both of them have some sort of connection to this corporation and or the vampire community in San Salud. They work around all of these societal problems, all of these problems that this corporation is causing while they are falling in love. This stuff is so good. This stuff is so good. They have incredible disability representation from A to Z. The name of disability is probably represented in here. The queer spectrum is present all over the place. I don't even know what else to say. I'm so in love with these books. I'm so in love with these books. Vampires! And the last recommendation I have for you is another series. Because of course it is. You heard me talk about this so many times at this point. I think everyone knows what this is if you've been on my channel before, like once. And that is the Sex Wizard series by Alethea, Faust. Have I read any of these books? I mean, yeah, I read book 1, so naturally I bought the rest of the series. The final book is coming out this month. Duh! But if you are looking for any kind of representation under the rainbow, you will find it in these books. I genuinely cannot think of anything that is not in these books when it comes to gender or sexuality. It's all in here. It's all in here. But what is the Sex Wizard series about, I hear you ask, because somehow you haven't heard me gush about the series before. This series follows a guy named Domini. He is the very handsome naked guy on the cover of book 1. He is actually just a ranger. He's doing his thing. He's helping people get through this very dangerous forest. And one day, he helps a very nice lady go from A to B, and that lady is so nice that he and the lady decide to do the deed in a tent, because what else are you going to do in the heart of a forest, right? So they do the deed, and it is so good that this lady realizes, hey Dom, you have latent magical talent. You want to train that magical talent? Here is a letter of recommendation for the only magic school in the entire country. Go forth! And Domina is like, huh? No thank you. And keeps living in the forest until one day he can't continue with that life, so he's like, might as well try that. So he goes to this magic school without knowing how magic is used, how magic is cast. No one has explained that to him. This lady just said, hey, you have magical talent after they shack. So he's like, okay, cool. Duh. So he goes to the school, and immediately upon entering the school building, he figures out what magic is all about, because in the Sex Wizards series, we're not doing sex magic. Well, we kind of do sex magic, but we are not casting any spells for, like, sexual longevity, or, I don't know, fertility, or whatever. No. The series is called Sex Wizards, because in order to cast magic, you have to shag. It's a kink-based magic system with, I think, 8 schools of magic, and each school of magic has a list of kinks associated with it. So you have to perform the act featuring these kinks in order to use a spell of the school that it belongs to. So if you, for example, want to summon a familiar, that is the conjuration school. There's a list of kinks that is associated with conjuration. So in order to summon your familiar, you have to do these things. And that is how magic works in this world. In book 1, Domini is taught how all of this works. And in this book, he is specifically a conduit, meaning someone else is casting magic, but you kind of need two to tango. There is a magic school where you don't need a second one, but never mind that. And Domini is like, well, I try everything twice. So he literally fucks his way through all of the schools of magic and the school of magic to figure out, okay, why, how, what, okay, cool, and he enjoys it. In book 2, Mastery, which I haven't read yet, by the way, he tries his hands at casting, meaning he is the one who is doing the things to/with someone else, and apparently he has a bit of trouble, so he gets a little special attention by the headmaster, which is Arlon. This man. Then in book 3, there is a competition. I hate competitions, but maybe this is the book that makes me love competitions. Because in this one, Domini is, hey, let's have this magical competition and I am going to be the prize. And then he paints himself gold. That is all I know about this book. And in this one, I don't know what's going on. I just know that these characters, Domini and Albrick, I believe, they are separated. They are, at this point, in a committed relationship. It is not a spoiler, that's literally what happens in book 1. And they are separated, so now it's a long-distance relationship, I guess? Because someone has to go on a very long trip, I guess. Despite all of this being filled with smut to the very brim, this first book is, if I'm generous, 75% smut. If I'm generous, I would actually say it's like 90% smut. What little plot you get is amazing. What little plot you get is just so good. What? Because not only do you have a kink-based magic system, but you also have a high fantasy plot. In book 1, it's not really there, but we are introduced to a new danger to the magic society and the kingdom as a whole. And by the last book that is coming out this month, I think we have like someone trying to overthrow the government or something. Like there is a high fantasy plot in here somewhere, buried beneath copious amounts of bodily fluids, I guess. And there you have it. A very heavy stack of queer recommendations from yours truly. Oh boy, this is so heavy. How can I hold this up? Yeah, let me know in the comments if you have read any of these and what you thought about them. Let me know if you want to pick any of these books up. If you don't want to talk to me, leave a rainbow emoji down in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And yeah, I guess I see you in the next video. Bye!